even if everything else on the website is beautiful, the fonts, the colors, your branding, one photo that's like really poorly lit or out of focus or pixelated because the size of it is too small, stuff like that just kills the whole vibe.
Hey there, and welcome to the Event Crushed podcast. Each week, we'll be chatting about all things wedding industry, entrepreneurship, and how to crush it in life and business. I'm so glad you're here. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I am going to jump right in with a question, and I want you to be honest with me, okay? So, when was the last time that you updated your website images? I'm guessing maybe it's been a minute. I know for me, it has. For most of us, it's something that kind of falls to the bottom of the to-do list, but your photos on your website play a huge role in setting the tone for your brand, creating connection with potential clients, and ultimately helping you book more weddings. That's why I'm so excited to introduce you to Emily Jane Lee. She is a website strategist and designer for wedding pros and service-based creatives who want their site to finally feel like them and work the way it's supposed to. She runs her studio by Emily Jane, where she's helped over 100 business owners create websites that are easy to use, easy to update, and genuinely support their business. She's been featured by Honeybook, Book More Weddings, the Wedding Summit Series, and several top educators in the industry, and she's known for her practical approach, warm personality, and love of a good Loom video. And speaking of the Book More Wedding Summit, it is happening right now this week, and Emily is a featured speaker along with myself and so many other talented pros. If you haven't already signed up, you can still grab your free ticket at eventcrush.com/summit. I also wanted to mention that Emily offers done-for-you image curation service as part of her VIP days, where she curates an on-brand image bank from your photos, strategically selected to align with your goals. And she's actually offering 15% off of this service through the end of 2025 when you mention the Event Crushed podcast. Plus, don't miss her free image optimization guide, which walks you through how to optimize your files for SEO, page speed, and visibility. And that, along with all of the other details, will be linked in the show notes. And with that, let's welcome Emily to the show. Hey, Emily, welcome to the show. I am so excited to get to know you more and chat with you today all about the images on our website and how we can really optimize them to the fullest.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Becky. I am so excited to talk about this because I definitely feel like not enough people talk about it when it comes to their websites, and it's super important.
Yes, you are absolutely right. And I know I mentioned this before we even were recording, but when we were first kind of talking about topics and this came up, I was like, oh, that's like such a specific thing. But as I was really thinking about it more and preparing questions, I realized that there is so much we can get into. So I'm really excited for this conversation. And before we jump in, I would love it if you could just introduce yourself to my listeners and share a bit about your background in the wedding industry and how you work with wedding pros today.
Sure. So I actually started as a photographer. So that was like my first creative love. And eventually I had to sadly stop doing photography because I was just having too much issues with chronic pain. And that is a very physical job. So luckily by that point, I had built my own website as a photographer, and I had kind of started obsessing over all of that side of things. So I was like, I feel like I could help other people with this too. And so I dipped my toe in it, and then I absolutely fell in love with it. So I've been doing that for the past 6 years or so. And so I just love working with other wedding pros. I mean, I was just starting to dip my toe into that side of photography. Unfortunately, when I had to start scaling back and stuff, but, I just love the wedding world. Like, what's more fun? I mean, if you could build a website, you would want to build like a really pretty one for the wedding industry, right? So it always keeps it fun and different. And I love that, like, I get to learn all about the industry. And so I can provide a lot of insight, as far as that goes and what couples are looking for. but there's still so many different types of vendors that I get to help at the same time.
That's awesome. And so you do specialize like specifically in wedding pros, or do you work with other like creatives or service industries too?
I do. I keep it to service-based businesses, but I definitely specialize in and market to wedding pros specifically. So that's the majority of my clients.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I'm with you. If I was a web designer, those are the kind of websites I would want to work on.
Right?
Like they're just so pretty and aesthetically pleasing. So I totally get it.
Yeah, especially when you're like me and you come from a photography background, I just can't get enough of all those photos. And so I also love bringing that side of it too, because this is why I wanted to talk about this, because a lot of people don't know which of their photos are the best ones to display. So I love being able to bring that eye to it as well.
Yeah, the fact that you were a photographer and now you're a web designer just puts you in a really awesome position to be able to help wedding pros to know, one, how to like best, set up their websites for potential clients, and also knowing like the right types of images, which is what we are talking about today. I love this topic. This is awesome. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, obviously, as wedding pros, we have images all over our website. A lot of us have like a gallery page where we have several photos, but then we also, of course, have just like our contact page, our about page, and hopefully we have images on all of those pages. So in looking at the images on our website, I just wanted to ask you, like, why should we be paying so much attention to the photos that we're sharing? Like, obviously, the wedding industry is very visual, but I thought maybe with your unique perspective, you could just share a little bit about why we should be putting such a heavy emphasis on the images that we're choosing for our website.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So your images really set the tone for your brand as a whole, but also what people can expect from working with you. So it kind of gives them like a window into the experience of being with you on that day and what you can help create for them. And so when they land on the homepage, you're really setting that first impression and you want to hook them right away. And so if you don't make that great first impression, a lot of times they won't even bother to go look at the gallery. So really every page of the website matters. You don't want to hide all of your best stuff away on one page, like the gallery or the portfolio page. You want every page to, like I said, have that same experience, that same feeling, whatever feeling you want your brand to be associated with, so that it makes it easier for you to attract those dream clients.
Absolutely. You mentioned a gallery page, and I wanted to ask you about this because I used to have a gallery page, and then when I redid my website this past year, we removed it. So I don't have a gallery anymore. And I was just curious your thoughts. Like, do you think every wedding pro should have a gallery page? Or for me, I'm kind of using my blog / like social media as my gallery. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that you don't need one most of the time unless you're not consistently blogging your weddings or using social media, like you said. It also kind of depends on your website design. So if you're showing a lot of photos on other pages and you're finding different ways to show little galleries or slideshows or collages throughout, then again, you don't really need to do that all again on a separate page. You can, especially if you do have a more visual service that you offer, then it can make sense and maybe it will simplify things for you. So if you're designing your website yourself, that might just be easier to just have its own gallery page, but you definitely do not need it. And that also helps with figuring out like how to, a lot of people feel like, okay, if I put this photo or this wedding on my gallery page, should I also put it on my homepage? And sometimes that can be hard to decide, especially if you don't have a ton of images to work with. So just scratching the gallery page can make that easier sometimes. The other thing I want to mention while we're talking about gallery pages is a lot of the times they just have way too many photos on them. So quick tip, you can keep it under like 30 photos and that would probably help your site load faster. And it's just like not as overwhelming, especially if someone's looking on their phone. You don't want to make them be scrolling through a million photos.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Would you say the same thing for a blog, like of a real wedding that someone's sharing? Do you think that should be like under 30 photos too, or what would you say for that?
I think ideally, yes, it is better for your SEO if things load faster, and also people's attention spans are short. So usually, if they're not the couple at the wedding, they don't need to see that many photos. They don't care that much, unfortunately. So it's much better to just kind of mix it all together, give them a really good highlight reel instead of showing them like a part of every single part of the day. And I will acknowledge though that it can be really hard to get it down to that number, especially when you really,
so hard.
yeah, when you really love the wedding day. So, I mean, if you can get it under 50, that's pretty great too.
Okay, that's really helpful. Yeah, that's been a struggle for me. It's just because I want to show all the different details of the day and the couple, and it's difficult to
Yeah.
narrow it down. But yeah, somewhere between 30 and 50. I feel like I usually end up with like 40. So, over 30,
I think
could
that's
still
fine.
probably
Yeah.
try a little harder, but yeah. The next thing I want to get into a little bit is the idea of consistency. And I know I have seen this, and I'm sure that you have too. I think, especially for someone like a wedding planner or someone who's not a photographer, because I think it's probably easier for a photographer to have like consistency among their images on their website, because at least like the editing style is the same more or less. But like as a planner, I'm working with so many different photographers that all have different styles. And I've always struggled a little bit with that on my social media too, where I want things to look cohesive, but then it's just hard with different photography styles. But can you just speak a little bit about consistency among photos on our websites? And I'm talking like photo editing style, but what other ways should we be thinking about consistency as it pertains to photos on our websites?
Yeah. Yeah. What you touched on is definitely a real struggle. I would say that the reason you said it's easier for photographers is because they get to control their editing style, but also like just the more photos you have in general, the more selective you can afford to be. And so let me talk about, okay, like the different forms of consistency. So the most important thing that I think everyone can do to get it to look more consistent is focusing on the quality of the image. And maybe it sounds obvious, but I still see it all the time where you want to show your versatility. And so you're willing to show these lower quality photos of these other things that you've created or weddings that you've worked on because you want to show people like, I have the experience, I have the range, right? But really that's not doing you any favors. And it can actually bring down the overall perceived value of your brand and the quality of your website as a whole, because your images really can make or break the design. So even if everything else on the website is beautiful, the fonts, the colors, your branding, one photo that's like really poorly lit or out of focus or pixelated because the size of it is too small, stuff like that just kills the whole vibe. And if you're trying to charge premium prices or just whatever the heck you want to charge, and you want to be perceived as very professional, you don't want your website to look DIY most of the time. So that's the first thing that you can really kind of audit your site for. And if you still feel like I need to show that work, but it just either it's a low quality image or it just really sticks out like a sore thumb, like maybe all of your other work that you have so far is kind of light and bright and airy, but then this one image was edited by someone with a totally different style, like it's very dark and heavy feeling, I would just use those in more hidden places. So the blog is a great place for that. Social media, I think it's fine to get away with a little bit less consistency, especially nowadays where your grid doesn't matter quite as much as individual posts do. So I wouldn't stress about that so much. But on your main core website pages, your homepage, your service about, etc., you really want it to be as clean feeling as possible, where everything is kind of, it just melds well together.
Okay. Yeah, that makes complete sense. I do have a follow-up question on that because I have lots of beautiful wedding images, but I've done like a bunch of corporate events, but they rarely ever have a professional photographer. And so I don't have really many photos at all on my website. I have a page about corporate events and I would love to have more photos, but all that I really have is iPhone photos that honestly, they're not terrible, but I guess I just kind of wanted to get your take on like if I were to put some iPhone photos on that page, like is that a big no-no because those are not going to be like those super high quality images, or is it okay because it's better than like not showcasing that work at all?
I would say it's smart for now to keep them to one page. So this goes for anything that you might be worried about showcasing. Like, okay, maybe these photos are a different editing style, or it's like a different color scheme that's just very different than all my other work, or it's lower quality, whatever it is. If you can group those together, then they will look more consistent with each other. And then you can kind of fake it for a little while until you get better quality photos. So that's the first thing. The second thing you could also do is consider adding in stock photos to help fill it out. These can work as background images or just maybe the image at the top of the page so that it looks really nice and professional. As long as it's not like directly related to what you create or sell. So maybe you could get general stock photos that are more like a detail shot or pictures of just people's faces, but something that still sets the tone. Does that make sense? And then if you could kind of find a way to mix those together, then that's okay for now until you can get more. The other thing is, don't forget about your brand photos. That can also help to fill out a page if you don't have enough photos to fill out like a whole page dedicated to a certain service or something.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I have kind of, ever since we redid my website, it's kind of just been like a placeholder on, I have like a couple different pages. We broke out, my different type of events because I do nonprofit, I do corporate, but I just haven't ever really gone in and like filled out those 2 pages because like the weddings are the bulk of what I do and it just hasn't been as big of a priority. But it is, I love corporate events and I want to do more of them. So this is super helpful for just, what I can personally do. And hopefully someone else listening is in a similar situation and this will be helpful for them too. But yeah.
One more thing about that, if that's something you're really wanting to push and sell more of right now, you can just create one section, maybe lower down on the homepage or something, and have a small gallery so the images are smaller. You still got the proof to show, but they're not like taking up a huge part of the screen where it's really obvious that they're low quality. And that's another good way to kind of cheat it while still getting it out there that like, hey, this is something else you might want to look into that I offer.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea. I think right now on my homepage, there is a section about corporate events and there's a photo from a wedding and you wouldn't necessarily know it was a wedding. There's no couple or anything. It's just more of like a detail shot, but like that's always felt a little funny to me to be like, click here for corporate events. And it's like a wedding photo just because, I didn't have any great options from the corporate events that I've done. But
I wonder if you could just grab like a shot of like the buffet from a wedding or like some sort of catering image. Maybe there's some other way you can kind of like cheat it for now. Like, hey, this could be a corporate event. You never know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's what it's like, a lounge area at an event. So it's like,
Okay.
I think someone could look at it and think it was a corporate event. So it works for now, but it's kind of a temporary situation. Another thing I wanted to talk about with you, just because, again, I think a lot of people struggle with this, especially in the earlier years of business when you are working with more like budget clients and DIY situations. I think people are obviously like sharing the work that they're doing, but then as they're wanting to elevate to that next market, it can just be kind of hard to do that if like all the images that you have are from more of like these budget weddings. And I was just curious if you had any advice about, I guess, just what we can do if we're wanting to get to that next level, but the photos and the images that we have aren't quite showcasing that.
So I get it because it definitely feels scary when it feels like you're turning down any kind of work when you're in that stage. And you want to be able to like just show what you have done, even if it's not something you're really interested in continuing to do. Like I worked with a planner one time who was like, I've done all these beach weddings and most of my photos are beach weddings, but I'm really sick of beach weddings. And so I think a lot of the things that we've already talked about you can kind of grab some of those tips and use them for yourself, like using more brand photos. So maybe if you could do some kind of a arrangement with a photographer and get more photos of you or, your team, or maybe coming up with some kind of styled shoot situation, all of those kinds of things are so helpful to create that really elevated brand image. Without having to show a ton of your work on the actual website page. Now, speaking of that, the next thing I want to mention is that you actually don't need to shove a ton of images on every page. If you don't have a lot that you are really wanting to lean into right now and do more of, and you don't have a lot to show of that, don't feel pressured to put like 30 images on a page. Put 3. And if those are 3 of the absolute most high-end looking images, that is going to have a huge impact. So you can just focus on keeping it simple, but very curated for now. And that would make such a big difference. And if you need to get creative with just using certain details from a wedding, you don't have to show the whole thing. But if that is the best little floral arrangement or the best little piece of that wedding and it looks really high-end or nice, definitely highlight that. Like, don't feel pressured to be like, I have to show the entire like wide shot of the ceremony if it doesn't actually look that nice or it's not representative of the kinds of things you want to keep doing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah. Yeah. That's super helpful. The next thing I would like to ask you is again, we've kind of mentioned people who might be in the first few years of business and don't have like a huge budget to do like a custom designed website. So I wanted to ask you, for anyone who might be more of like DIYing their website, they're using a template, something like that. What are some ways that they can elevate their website visually and like make sure that they are having a cohesive brand feel throughout their website? I just thought you'd be a good person to chat.
Sure. Yeah. I've got some quick tips that you can look at right away on your own website, because these are some of the most common mistakes that I see, but also the easiest to fix. So one is making sure that everything is super legible. That is something that can instantly make your website look more crisp and clean and elevated. So things to look out for are having text on top of a background image that's a little bit too busy. That can just create clutter, or maybe even people won't be able to read the information at all, which is obviously not going to help you. Another one is like having not enough color contrast between the text and the background color behind it. And then making sure that like the fonts are all really clear and easy to read. So if you are using something more decorative for a font, that's okay, as long as you're not putting any important information in that font, using it more as like a decorative element. And then, is the text big enough? So like 16 point is a good minimum size, both for desktop and mobile. So you can check it on both screens, make sure that it's large enough. But that kind of thing, like I said, if you're wanting to pick a fancy or funky font, but you're not sure if everyone's going to be able to read it, ask your mom, ask your grandma, because if there's any doubt in your mind, a lot of the times, in my experience, there's always someone who can't read it. So going the simpler route is a safer choice. And then don't be afraid of negative space either. That is kind of like the number one thing that professional website designers use to make something look more professional, because I think a lot of people are just afraid of that negative space, and they feel like they need to cram some detail or piece of information into kind of every corner of the website. But that can really make it look messy, and yeah, just not as elevated. So lastly, since we were talking about images today, another trick you can do, if at all possible, is to make sure that all of your images line up with your brand colors. So if you do have like a clear brand color palette, making sure that the images are either also in that color palette, that's the best thing you can do to make it look super high end. But if you can't do that, at least making sure they don't clash with your brand colors. So for example, if your colors are like white, soft teal, and soft brown, maybe don't use those photos or feature the photos on like one of your main pages where it's like bright purple bridesmaids dresses, because it's just gonna clash. It's gonna make it look more DIY. You get the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. We tried to do that with my current website, but it's hard when like, we have weddings and so many different color palettes, and it's like definitely a task trying to match everything up, but it's fun.
So if you are somebody, since I don't want to hate on people who love bright colors, that is not at all the idea here. So if you are somebody who like wants to be known for very fun, colorful wedding style, you can still do that. Maybe make your brand a little bit more on the neutral side so that it doesn't clash. Or just make sure that you're mixing it up throughout so that that's not the only, like I said, bright photo sticking out like a sore thumb.
Yes. Oh, I wanted to see if you have a story or an example of a client whose website visuals were like sending the wrong message, and then you were able to help them. And I don't know, I'd love to hear like a success story.
Sure, yeah. So I actually worked with a photographer last year who was having trouble getting leads. And he told me he was known for his very artistic Fujifilm style, which has very like rich, high contrast colors. But when I looked at his website, I couldn't actually tell that that was his specialty, because I think a lot of people maybe by default are picking more of the lighter, brighter photos, because it's kind of that classic syndrome of like wanting to do what your competitors are doing or look the part. But that wasn't obviously helping him out at all, to stand out. And so the other thing that he was doing too was showcasing some of his older work that he really thought was like a more of an artistic angle or like a unique backdrop. And they were cool, but since they were his older work, they weren't like quite as in focus. They were a little bit fuzzy. And so that's kind of what I was seeing. So we went through, we carefully selected his best stuff, his most impactful, high quality stuff that really aligned with what he said he wanted to be known for. And we also made sure that the copy on the website was backing up what he was saying he's really good at. And so no joke, within a week of updating the website, he booked a dream client. And she even said that the consult call was kind of more just like a formality for her because she had already made her decision just by looking at the website. So love that for him.
Yeah, that's amazing. Those are the kind of stories we want to hear. That's super cool. How often should wedding pros be refreshing their website imagery? I feel like it's one of those things that kind of gets pushed to the back burner. And I was just curious, like, how often would you think it's like a seasonal thing, a yearly thing? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think that if you don't like put it on the calendar or set some kind of reminder, you're probably never going to get around to it or never just randomly think to do it. So that's a good idea. And I will say, like, the more frequently you change out your photos, that can positively impact your SEO because you're essentially telling Google that your site is being kept up to date. So it's totally up to you, like how much effort you want to put into that. Like if you want to do it every quarter, that's really great for your SEO. But aside from that, it really just depends on like what's going on in your business right now. So if you're in a growing phase where things are constantly evolving, you're still learning what you want to be known for or what makes your work unique, or you're just getting more weddings under your belt that you're actually proud of, you want to be doing this a little bit more often. So I think twice a year is realistic. Like, I think realistically for most people, it's hard to update every quarter. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I think twice a year is like a good, healthy number that you can try to stick to if things are changing quickly. And if you're in a place where not much is changing, you're already working with the types of clients that you want, and it's more just about keeping the website fresh, then I think once every couple of years is fine.
Okay, that's really helpful. Yeah, every quarter, twice a year, whatever it makes sense for, the person. It's nice that it's not like a hard and fast, like you have to do
No,
it.
not at all. It's more just about it's just about staying on top of it for whatever your goals are right now.
Absolutely. Okay. I know you shared some mistakes earlier. Are there any other like common mistakes that you see wedding pros making when choosing which photos to showcase on their site? Or do you feel like, did we cover that already?
I think there's a couple. So one is that I think people get stuck on showing literally what they create and nothing else. So, like calligraphers, for example, if all of their images are of stationery suites or paper products, and then there's nothing else to kind of set the vibe of the brand, or this is my next mistake, they're also not showing off their face. Like, that's another huge one that I see a lot. Or any faces at all, really, that can really help with tying back to what I said at the beginning of our conversation. Like, if there's a certain feeling that you want your brand to be associated with, or the experience that you provide for people, or a certain energy that you are known for giving off when you actually interact with people, you want the website to be that first introduction to that, so that when they actually meet you, it feels very natural. It's not like a shock to the system, like, oh, this isn't who I was expecting. So your photos can really play into that. And if you show faces like your face, or your clients' faces, then you can also kind of control that emotion. So are you like a photographer who's known for capturing like a lot of the tender, sweet moments, the quiet moments with family members, but right now you're only actually showing, like really lively, happy, energetic photos? Like, you can really control a lot of that mood with the photos that you're showing.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I feel like it'd be kind of jarring to go to someone's website. I guess it makes sense. I can kind of see for like stationery designers, but I would hope like at least on the about page, there'd be photos of them. But yeah, whenever I see a website and there's no photos of the person at all, like it is a little bit jarring, especially when it's someone that like I haven't worked with before, and maybe we have an upcoming wedding and I'm like looking at their website just to kind of see like what to expect, and I can't find a photo of them. It would be nice to know like a face. Who am I working with? And especially
Absolutely.
if I'm feeling that way as the planner, I can only imagine how a couple would feel like, well, who am I working with? Like, they know it's a real person, but who the heck is it? So yeah, showing your face
Yeah.
is so important.
It comes across so inviting too, especially if you're looking directly at the camera and smiling. That's just going to make people automatically feel more comfortable talking to you, even if they don't realize it, because they kind of have that first, like, minute introduction to you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you're totally right about like photos where you're looking into the camera smiling. I feel like a lot of them, even for me too, like usually my favorite photos of myself are like, I'm looking off to the side, or I'm laughing and like looking off. I don't know, but it is, I think the connection piece just like it works better when you're looking at the camera.
Yeah, especially if there's a section, which I recommend everyone does, where you're introducing yourself. That's the best place to use the ones where you're looking at the camera, because otherwise it can feel a little bit impersonal. If you do have one of those other kind where you're like looking away, you're more interested in something else than having that conversation with them. But those other kinds of brand photos are definitely like great to use throughout other places of the website.
For sure, for sure. Okay, awesome. Well, in kind of wrapping up here, I would love it if is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you think is important for listeners to know about their website photos and images?
Yeah, I would say like if you only have a little bit of time to work on this, or maybe you don't have enough images to like redo, all of the images on your site, but maybe you just want to focus on a few key places, I would definitely get your homepage down. Like that is, especially the top of the homepage, because that is typically the first impression, even if it's not the first thing that people see, because maybe they came in through a blog post or somewhere else. Oftentimes the homepage is the first thing they will click on to figure out what you're about, what they can expect from you. So it still is the most important place. So make sure that that is really nailed down with making it engaging for your ideal clients. It's your best stuff. It's in line with your brand colors, like be the most picky about that. And then if you want another place to look after that, I would get the services or packages page really, really consistent, because that's where you're setting up the value that you're providing. And especially if you're showcasing your prices, you really want everything to be as enticing as possible, basically.
Okay. Those are, two super important things to be working on and auditing, and just making sure, like, on those pages, at the very least, that we're showcasing our very, very best images. This did make me think of another question. So a lot of wedding pros will have that like header image on their homepage, like kind of above the fold. It's like the first, photo that you see, or maybe there's a slider there. Do you have any thoughts on like what type of image that should be? Does it matter if it's a couple or a detail? Like, of course, it depends on the type of vendor, but do you think there's one type of image that does better than another?
I don't. I think it really just depends on, is it saying something? So, so for example, if you have a picture of a couple and they're kind of just in like a really blank field, and it's like a wide shot, right? And they're kind of like facing off into the sunset, and the picture's taken from behind. Okay. Sounds like a really nice romantic photo, but let's say you're a planner. Well, that really isn't saying anything about what you can do for me on my wedding day. So if you were a photographer, then maybe that would be a useful photo, because maybe you want to be known for those really romantic kind of storytelling shots. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. It kind of just depends on like, what are you trying to say? And again, that's if you have enough images to be really selective about it. Otherwise, just pick the highest quality, prettiest photo you have, and that is great for now.
That's super helpful. Yeah. Asking yourself, like, what is it saying? Because you're right. If it's just like this, far off shot of a couple and it's like, okay, cool. But yeah, it doesn't really, if you're a planner, it's not really going to do a lot to speak to the potential client. So that's super great advice. So where can my listeners find you to learn more about your web design services and keep in touch with you?
Yeah. So you can find me at byemilyjane.com and at byemilyjane on Instagram. And I'm always happy to chat with you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I will be sure to include those links in the show notes so people can connect with you. And again, thank you so much. This was super fun. And I'm grateful that you took the time to chat. I'm excited to get this out there.
Thanks, Becky. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Event Crushed podcast. I hope you found value in this episode, and if you did, please consider sharing it with a wedding industry friend. We also hope you'll consider leaving a rating or review for the show to help other listeners find it. This podcast is edited and produced by Ace Sound Design. If you're looking to elevate your audio experience, their info can be found in the show description. As always, thank you for listening, and please connect with us on Instagram if you haven't already. Now get out there and crush it.